Call the meeting of the Municipal Airport Authority, City of Fargo, Tuesday, April 12th, 2022 to order. First order of business, approve the minutes of the regular meeting held March 22nd. So moved. So moved in a second.
Second.
Before we go on, I should actually introduce our new member. I apologize. Paula Ekman has joined the board. Paula, a little bit about yourself.
I'm honored to serve. I bring into my time here about 30 years in the airline industry, about 20 years in commercial, and 10 years in corporate. I also served as a township commissioner a township supervisor for 9 years, and I've always tried to be active in my community and to serve, but also I just hope to bring a little fresh perspective, and I'm very honored to serve.
We appreciate you being here. We have a motion and a second. Vote.
Win. Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye.
I'll look for Capitan. I don't see him there. Okay, Ekman. Aye. Next, we'll move on to airport vouchers totaling $315,554.98. Motion.
Motion to approve the vouchers.
In a second.
Good.
A second.
Jump in.
Any comments, conversation? None? Roll call. Lind.
Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye.
Ekman.
Aye.
Aye. Number 3, approve individual vouchers as follows. Superior Electric, $17,118. Peterson Mechanical, $133,400. Meineke Johnson, $5,000. Flash Parking, $356,857.50. Butler Machinery, $22,787.49. Markle Six Estates, $2,900. Flint Communications, $8,668.86.
Chairman, just a question, flash parking, that was, is that the last one of those, or we got a couple more?
No, we're still withholding a little over $100,000 as they have to finish the East Economy lots, so
Okay.
there's still more to do there.
I do have a comment about it. I think it's interesting that our vendor, our operating vendor, was very specific about holding off on making payments till work got done. They were very pushy about it, not making payments until work was done, and that's impressive. I appreciate it. Call for vote.
Make a motion to approve the vouchers Alpha through Gulf.
Second. A second, please.
A second.
Okay. Lind.
Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye.
Here.
Aye.
Oh,
I'm here. All right, do you vote yea or nay on the vouchers?
Yes.
Okay. Got them all. Thank you. All right.
Number 4, receive a report from CMTA regarding Eastside Terminal HVAC.
Okay, Steve is here if you want to come up here. So just to give you a little history, a number of months ago, Spectrum Aeromed came to us to see what we could do to improve the air quality in their office space in these terminal buildings. So we had CMTA move forward, and that project is underway. And as part of that discussion, we looked at, well, what about the entire East Terminal building, the former passenger terminal, to look at air quality. And today, Steve has his report on recommendations that we can do to improve air quality in the entire building.
Yeah, so like Sean said, we went through studies that I walked through with Dan, went through the existing systems, kind of a mixture of systems based on, as different tenants have moved in, different space needs for it. There's 2 old rooftop units that are probably 30 plus years old that in reality should be budgeted or looked at being replaced, that serve should have been the main lobby and then where the North Star Aviation Insurance location is located at. There's 2 furnaces and condensing units, and those units do bring in outside air for, I think, Dakota Dry Ice and Meadowlark, I think, is those 2 spaces. Then when we get upstairs, it's all cooling. It for the most part is done with wall hung split units. in the FAA space, there's 2 cooling-only rooftop units. They don't bring in any outside air. And there's also a fan coil, again, that doesn't bring in any outside air for that second floor space. So, you know, as we went through these, you know, a lot of our recommendations and what we've seen has remained the same. How do we make sure we get the ventilation air we need for outside air to dilute and remove any airborne pathogens in the air? How do we increase, or in some cases provide, outside air for ventilation? What's the maximum level of filtration we can achieve for these spaces as well? The gold standard, ideally, we try and get to a MERV 13. Most of these are at a MERV 8, where they have a mini split wall hung unit. They're probably not even a MERV 8. They're just a washable filter. You'll think of like a plastic type nylon film, you know, just to try and keep the evaporator coil clean. That's the extent of what they have in those. So, our recommendations for those 2 old rooftop units, in reality, we should look at getting those replaced, put in units that we know can provide the outside air that should be needed for that main floor area for what it services, and have, you know, achieve that MERV 13 filtration for those spaces. The Meadowlark space and the Dakota Dry Ice, they have the ability to bring in outside air, you know, just look at those, make sure that's balanced to the right amount when the space is occupied, it's bringing in that amount of outside air. And then just looking at, can we get a MERV 11 filter in there, or maybe if we even support a MERV 13. Sometimes we find they can, sometimes they can't. When we get to the second floor, we need to look at filtration, as well as how are we going to get ventilation air for those spaces is our recommendation. So you could look at it a couple of different ways. The one approach is to take care of it by lease space and put in a small, think of anyone who has a residential size or in your house, an air exchange or a heat exchanger, you could do something like that to bring in that outside air to ventilate those spaces. Or a more larger scale project, you could address the whole second floor with a common system to ventilate that whole space that way. You know, it all depends on what the board feels is the right way to do it. There's a lot of those spaces right now that aren't very heavily utilized, especially second floor. There's not a whole lot of traffic in and out of there. You know, multiple lease spaces, people are only there short periods of time, and that's 1 or 2 people at a time. So at this point, I don't know that it makes sense to do a whole system unless there's a thought that there's going to be a significant change in the uses as more, you know, a higher usage based on the tenants and within that space. You know, the one exception on second floor is the FAA space. You know, how do we get ventilation air for them especially? So again, that could be a small individual unit to provide ventilation for that space. And then from a filtration standpoint, multiple manufacturers, some are, you know, commercial grade, a plug-in HEPA filter unit that sits in a corner, you know, approximately the size of a dehumidifier, maybe it's slightly deeper, that can circulate that air in that space to provide filtration. So, a summary of our findings and recommendations in there. Any questions on what I've gone through and what we found?
Chairman? Yes. I would just, this would fall still under CARES grant improvements, correct, Sean? Yes?
Yes, it's CARISA or ARPA, the ARPA grant that we were awarded that we haven't tapped into yet. That is what the language says in the grants. Sometimes getting the invoices through the FAA reviewer is a challenge. There's a significant disagreement within the FAA on what's considered site improvements and operations and maintenance. And airports are struggling with, well, I just replaced this HVAC unit because it wore out and it broke. Capitalize it. And they say, well, that's a site improvement, so then you have to do the development addendum with the CARES grant. Other reviewers at the FAA said, no, that's operations, just in the reimbursements go through. So it's a moving target, but we've provided a copy of this to the FAA office in Bismarck. They're kind of our gateway to go up and find out from the CARES administrators and those with Chris and ARPA, get a preliminary reading on, is this gonna qualify for your fund? They will then come back and say, every piece of equipment that is installed has to meet the Buy American clause. And I don't know if, we have manufacturers that can provide this, that meet the Buy American clause.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that, there's several manufacturers, some manufacture in Canada, Mexico, some overseas, not a whole lot in our industry, but the ones that really gear towards, hey, we need to buy American, some of them do have factories that are located within the United States to meet those requirements. So let's say that HEPA air purifier, if you go with the commercial grade, the company is owned out of, one manufacturer is owned out of Canada, they have a plant in Canada, but they also make products, I think it's down in Georgia, so they can meet that Buy American offer.
So it is our intent, Eric, to be reimbursed with those grants, because that's the intent of them, is to reduce airborne pathogens and mitigate, COVID, so. But it is I'll pass it.
Yeah, and I think to that point, probably replacing the two rooftop units might be looked upon as, hey, that's a maintenance item due to age of the equipment. But if we're looking at, okay, how do we provide ventilation there for second floor, and you want to look at it as a whole building or individual space, it's pretty hard to argue that that's a maintenance item since those systems don't exist today. You're adding supplemental equipment to meet that requirement.
Jeff has been helping us to go through just a list of projects that we've been doing right now, whether it's going to qualify under a CARES addendum or some other addendum. Depending on who you talk to in Bismarck or Chicago, it's like, well, that's operations and maintenance. Well, no, it's not. It's a site. It's a moving target. So, but nonetheless, regardless of where the funding comes from, I think we owe it to our tenants to improve the air quality if we have a chance. So I think we should move forward with it.
I was just trying to get somebody else to pay for it. Or it's all
We're gonna
back.
do everything we can. We're gonna do everything we can to make sure that one of those grants.
Eric, that's unlike.
Nobody likes to replace their furnace or their air conditioner, right? Everybody's like, oh, man. But, so if we can get, Uncle Sam to pay for it, that's worth doing correctly.
Motion, or
For them to move forward
All right.
with plans and specifications.
we get a motion, then move forward.
Yes, I'll make a motion. So moved. I'll say it that way.
We get a
Second. Second.
Any conversation?
Aye.
Aye.
Capitan,
Aye.
Hingham.
Aye. Moving on to number 5, receive change order for, Westside Terminal HVAC pathogen project.
There's any questions on this? This work is done. So when you walk out of the hallway here and then look up at the ceiling at the units that were installed, we had a custom paint job to match the ceiling, so they kind of look like they blend in, and work is done. So, I don't know if there's anything else to add, Steve, but,
Yeah, the comment where that came up was when the project was originally bid, it was set to be a 3-prime bid, mechanical, electrical, and general. We were able to secure mechanical and electrical bid, but a general bid was not secured for some of that custom painting, a little bit of roofing work. And so what this was that cost of that general construction work that when we had worked through with, initially with the airport, hey, let's move forward, award that, the scopes of projects we got bids on, knowing that there'll be a proposal request issued and a change order to take care of that general construction. So it's from Peterson Mechanical. They've really done a great job of mitigating whatever general construction work was required for the project, and it has pretty much been limited, trying to make the units blend in with custom paint for, kind of above the security check-in, that open space right at the top of the stairs.
Thank you. Motion second.
did we already get a motion in a second? Motion in?
I didn't hear one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Make a motion to receive the change order for the Westside Terminal pathogen mitigation project.
I'll second it. Aye.
Cosgrove?
Aye.
Capitan?
Yes.
Hickman?
Aye.
Hingham.
Move on to number 6, receive request from KP Development for additional general aviation ground lease.
Darren Hall is here, Jim Sweeney is online, and this is for, did you get your parking too? Okay, thank you. He's got a little presentation here to give.
Yeah. Another one, Jim? Well, as Darren's getting this ready to go, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Darren Hall. I'm the Vice President of Business Development at Fargo Jet Center in Weathermont, or Weather Modification. I've been on this airport since '91, working when I moved here from Minot, and I've been with Fargo Jet since about a month before we opened the doors in '95. So it's been fun for myself to grow with our company as we've grown over the years, and I thought it'd be helpful to bring some context to our conversation today on our newest request for
Can everybody see the present PowerPoint online?
Yes.
Good. Okay, so I thought it'd be appropriate to bring us through just a little bit of a history lesson of where we've come through, or where we've come from as a company, and to where we're at today, and talk a little bit about why we need to continue to expand. So if we, John, you're going to click. Okay, so our company was founded in 1961 in Bowman, North Dakota. Weather Modification International operated out there for many years. And in 1993, when Pat Sweeney bought the company, they moved it back to Fargo, where they grew up. I shouldn't say back, but they moved it to Fargo. And the picture you see there is on the ramp in Bowman, North Dakota, all twin-engine Piper Twin Comanches. I think there's an Aztec on there and a little Cessna, but a fun point of fact, in the upper kind of center part of the screen, you'll see a Winnebago, and that was one of 7 Winnebagos we had at the time that was a mobile radar unit. And so there's a radar on top of the unit where we position that out wherever we're working around the state. In '95, as we worked in Fargo, when we moved back to Fargo, we operated out of a small hangar on 19th Avenue and really saw the need to expand on the airport and have our own footprint. That's when Fargo Jet Center became a company in 19.
I'd like to add that I did fly one of those airplanes. I can recognize it.
Oh, really? There we go.
7311 Yankees. Third one up.
It's probably on there. So this is fun to look back at as we developed that, or the airport developed the whole North General Aviation area. You can see here, the blue and gray building is the very first Fargo Jet Center facility. And it was an 8,000 square foot office building with a 12,000 square foot hangar that the airport helped get us started with, and our competitors side by side on that ramp. We operated for about 5 years competing side by side with the company that had been here. So that was our first endeavor into the FBO business as Fargo Jet Center. And when we started out, we had about 25 team members with the company, and it was part of my job was to hire all the customer service team and the line service team that we're now going to start serving the public as a part of this new company. Fast forward to this picture from Google Earth from 2001, but if you look on our facility, on the left side facility, we had tripled the size of our facility just in about 3 years. In 1998, we built a second hangar and an office and service addition that brought our footprint up to about 60,000 feet. And then in 2001, we bought our competitor out, and they had about 75,000 square feet. Their 2 hangars in their office facility. So now we think of the Fargo Jet Center complex, we're at about 135,000 square feet as a facility, and we had about 80 team members at that point. And so we're continuing to grow as a company. Fast forward another decade, and our most recent build on the facility up to today was the far east hangar on the east side of the ramp. We added another 30,000 square foot hangar. And really that was to accommodate the growth in base tenant aircraft and our own aircraft that we operate. But internally, we're continually growing. And at this point, this picture is from 2015. Our company was at about 180 people. We've grown from 80 to 180 over that decade, or a little bit more than a decade. And what we're here talking about today is our next phase of this, and where we've really grown as a company is in our maintenance and special mission modification business. So the red box is where our proposed facility will go. It will nearly double the size of our maintenance and technical workspace area, I'll say. And as we finish this, we'll be, right now as a company, we're over 200 employees strong, and that's through our whole enterprise. But this is what we're here kind of to talk about today. If we look at the entire facility, it's certainly the headquarters, world headquarters for our Weathermod company that works all over the world doing cloud seeding and atmospheric sciences type work. It's also the home for our flight school, our avionics and maintenance department, and then our charter and FBO services. And if you look in between our two first big hangars in there, you'll see the U.S. Customs and Border Protection office. So, here was that, Sean?
2013, maybe?
And it's exciting to see as we come out of the pandemic, we're finally starting to see some of that international traffic come back. Last year, when we looked at the numbers, we were about half of what we would normally be. In a normal year, we were up to about 800 clearances a year. So, moving forward from this just kind of shows you when we're talking about those international clearances, we travel the world and the country in marketing Fargo as a place to come to. Some people say we're in the middle of nowhere. I say we're in the middle of everywhere. And Jim and myself and a couple of other members from our team were in San Diego last week at the National Business Aviation Association's Schedulers and Dispatchers Conference. So anyone that schedules a corporate jet out there was at this conference. And in about a month, we'll be at the European Business Aviation Conference in Geneva, Switzerland, meeting with flight departments throughout Europe, telling them about Fargo and to come through Fargo, through the customs port, to clear customs on their way to the Southern California or Las Vegas area. So what's really driving our need to expand is partly in part due to our growth in special missions. If you look on the right-hand side, it ranges from atmospheric sciences, from the Weathermod company, the cloud seeding type airplanes and atmospheric sciences. But we've really grown into doing a lot of air ambulance type aircraft, search and rescue, and reconnaissance aircraft is some of the newest stuff that we're working on. You'll notice this airplane, you probably can read the tail on that. I won't say who the customer is, but this is a typical type of airplane that will come brand new out of the factory to Fargo, and then we'll modify it to serve whatever purpose the client needs. So this is the air ambulance aircraft. So we've modified the interior of the airplane to accommodate any kind of the needs that flight crew will have. This was a neat event. I think some of our board members were there this past year. In February of this 2021, we hosted the Greek Air Force, and we were part of a collaboration between Norwegian Special Missions, Textron Aviation, Spectrum Aeromed, who's also based on the airport here, and Fargo Jet Center was the completion center for these aircraft. And we hosted an event where we had the president of Textron Aviation here, a group from Norwegian Special Missions, the Greek Air Force, their ambulance service, all hosted ironically during the pandemic, which was incredible that we were able to get everybody here in country to do an event like this. So really special for us to do that. Here's those two aircraft completed, and this is what that looks like on the inside of the airplane. So these are equipped with 2 stretcher beds, but then all the infrastructure that goes into the cabin of the airplane, you'll see a picture here, and that looks like. More recently, in December, we delivered 2 Learjet 75s made by Bombardier to the Polish Air Ambulance Service that serves the entire country of Poland. So these were 2 airplanes that when these planes come into our shop, new out of the factory, it's a 6 to 9 month build for us to get through modifying those airplanes. So this was, again, 2 airplanes identical in the way we put them together. And currently, right now, we're working on 2 more of these aircraft for a different country in Europe that will, once we finish these, it'll be, I believe, October and December of this year that we'll finish and deliver these into Europe again as air ambulance aircraft. This is what that airplane looks like. When you take it apart, you take it all the way down to the structure of the aircraft as we're putting in power and air and oxygen and all the other support equipment that they may need. And then we put it together to look like what that finished product was. And this is probably our most recent thing. So this aircraft is a Quest Kodiak, and we were approached by the manufacturer to develop a retractable camera system that would mount a camera system like this, an ISR camera that you'd use for reconnaissance purposes. And so it changes the platform of that airplane from just a standard type airplane that, you know, anybody might use for whatever, now it can be used for special missions, for firefighting, for the highway patrol, for doing search and rescue, or for VOD purposes, whatever. Great platform. It's a really unique airplane in the marketplace. And we just did our last final certification test flight this last weekend. So we're expecting to see the certification from the FAA on the device that we've designed and engineered out of our facility in the next 30 days. And then we'll take it to market. This is just one of the weather mod airplanes. We did this for the Korea Meteorological Administration a few years ago, and this is our atmospheric sciences airplane. It's basically a laboratory in the sky. There's a lot of different devices in and around this aircraft that I won't get into detail on now, but this again was almost a year-long project for us to modify this airplane, and then we deliver it, train them on how to use it, and then we've actually now engaged with them in a support activity of annually we'll be working with them to keep the airplane up to speed. So from that, all of that work and the growth that we've seen in the special missions world is really outpaced the capacity that we have in our current facilities. And so really found the need to grow, and you see here just the idea and the concept of where the facility will go. It'll be 2 large hangars, about totaling 50,000 square feet, and then surrounded by 3 sides of office and technical workspace. Main floor would be technical space serving into the hangar, and the second floor would mainly be offices. And there's a rendering of that. You guys had it in your email, I believe, the 3D rendering of the building and what it looks like. And that's what I've got for that, just to lead into your conversation there. One last announcement I would like to make quickly is annually, our trade publication, Aviation International News, surveys pilots from around the world. And this is their survey they did, called the FBO survey. And we've talked about this maybe a few times before, but I'll pass this around so you can read it. And you can see it online as well. But Fargo Jet Center, we are proud to announce that we were ranked by pilots in the top 5% of facilities in the Americas. So North and South America, Fargo Jet Center is in the top 5%. I'll leave that with you, Chairman. Pass that around. I think it's page 22 in there. But we're super proud of that accomplishment of our facility. We get the accolade of being recognized in that, but we know, and whenever I'm with customers, we talk about how it's such a collaborative effort between the support we have from the airport authority and the airport shop. I think Andrew's on the call there, of having our ramps plowed and the runways open, accessible for our customers to come in. U.S. Customs and Border Protection being available 24 hours is huge. The tower, Casey and your team at the tower do an awesome job in supporting our customers coming in. When we see these planes coming from Europe, they're literally coming here to clear customs, buy some gas, and move on to their final destination. So the collaborative effort from this airport is really what helps us make rankings like this. It's not just about us, it's about us as a team together. So that's all I've got. I wanted to just give you that history lesson and extend an invitation. If you haven't been to our facility recently, I'd love to give you a tour of that and come up and take you around and show you what we've got going on. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Darren?
Thanks, Darren.
Good presentation. So the request is before you, and I know Jim is online here, for additional ground lease area. Their attorney's been working with Stacy. I don't know if you have that or.
I really don't have anything to add beyond the letter. And basically what Jim is asking for is to extend the previous leases so they all coincide to the 25-year plus 2 5-year extensions. And it's something that the board has done.
For all the hangars that they own on the whole airport.
With GP. Right now, they expire on December 31st of 2039. They have the 2 5-year options, board approved previously.
goal is to keep all properties concurrent, that owned to date and be built out concurrent, with lease time and extension.
Correct.
Can we get a motion on that?
Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Second,
Conversation? None?
when is the construction anticipated?
Yeah, we hope to break ground this spring or early summer and moving on. But no concrete date. Still working out a few things with our contract.
If Jim's on the call, Jim, do you have a comment or anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry I couldn't be there in person today, but I appreciate Darren being there and doing a nice job. No, we're appreciative of everything, and this request is our largest build ever, significant new investment, and we're thrilled to do it in Fargo. So we appreciate your support. Thanks.
I'm sure will the taxpayers when they're assessed.
Yes.
Call for vote. Lind?
Yes.
Cosgrove? Aye. Capitan?
Aye.
Heckman?
Aye.
Hingen?
Aye. Move on to number 7, receive update on proposed shared use, path for MAA property in the Park District.
Okay, so I know Stacy's spent some time on this as well. We did engage the FA, and unknown to us, the city and their engineer had engaged the FA as well. And back on March 18th, the FA program manager, Jason Kroll, responded that they reviewed the solicitation of view letter for the proposed Bison Village 10th Street North Shared Use Path project for the City of Fargo project for the letter they did sent. And basically the FA had no objection, provided the FA requirements are met under Part 77, navigational airspace. And then if our airport layout plan has to change, if those requirements be followed. So they do have the concurrence, and back in 2003 and 2006, we had the concurrence letters from the FA that Gary Stewart had obtained, allowing for the park to be developed initially. But any improvements that are made to the park, we also always notify the FA of any improvements, and this checks that box. I believe that they are okay to move forward. I know that there's been some public meetings or public hearings on this proposed path. I don't know, Eric, did you go to any of those?
Did not.
I haven't received any feedback from the city in terms of comments from the public about what their plan was, but as it sits right now, they're cleared to move forward with that project if they so desire. No, this is just informational. Yep.
Move on to number 8, receive update on proposed third lane for the security checkpoint.
Terry, are you on?
Yeah. Good morning. We are, I guess Joel at JK Engineering is finalizing some electrical stuff. There's quite a bit of it to do, I guess, and we will have that on the street this week, and are looking at a bid date of May 2nd, and we're inviting 4 contractors, and we'll probably be having a walkthrough of the facility sometime the week of the 25th. I'm having a hard time finding contractors to do something like this, especially after hours. So I think we found 4 that are interested. They haven't necessarily said that they would give us a price yet, but so, and then Joel's got 4 electricals as well. Lots of a ton of wiring to do, and thank goodness it's all underneath, so it will work pretty well, I think.
Questions or anything? Okay.
All right. Move on to number 10, authorize attendance. 9. Oh, excuse me. Receive update in East Economy Lot.
Jeff, you want to come up?
Okay. Testing you.
All right.
So the East Economy lot, we opened bids, here about, 3 weeks ago to build a new surface parking lot, right south of the tower. There's 202 stalls being added to that. And then in addition to the parking lot, this gate, on the east side of the terminal is gonna move down to here. We're gonna build a road. Sean, I have those contracts on the table. Border State, the low bidder. They had tentatively said that they didn't want to be held to a time on when they're gonna start, but targeting that June timeframe. And when talking to Joel over there, I said, I can't speak for airport authorities, but they're critical dates to have it done by November, available for, the ramp up in the springtime for all the traffic. And then I believe the flash parking equipment is final payment for that, so there's 2 entrance lanes, 2 exit lanes, and then the security system is a project to install new cameras and new access control equipment at all the overhead lift gates and sliding gates around the airfield here in the terminal. It's about a $1.6 million project, and part of that is just the equipment. And we also have to run fiber from the terminal up to Fargo Jet Center, up to the cargo rig, bring down to Sochi. A lot of underground work. That advertises tomorrow, and the bid opening is on. The intent would be to fund that through this CARES development. And then gate number 4, which is this boarding bridge right here. We are trying to come up with a plan to replace it just because it's so old and there's no parts to 1960s. And the goal is to, since there's such a long lead time on these, and they're in high demand. So the JDT, which is one of the manufacturers, says at least a year out if you're just wanting to sit out. So I had reached out to JDT directly. There are other recently did bridges that will work for Fargo, and the JDT will honor that bid price, and then purchase off if bridges bid out in Milwaukee. So you could have that bid list, assuming that it meets all the requirements. I have not heard anything back from them, so. Regarding Gate 4 and then our terminal area study, those 2 projects were put forth in an application for bill funding, the new federal funding account, I guess, that the FAA has provided, or the Department of Transportation has provided to airports over a 5-year period. So we put in for those amounts by the deadline, and then Senator Hoeven did send this Secretary of the Department of Transportation a letter of support for both of those projects, which should weigh pretty heavily in hopefully our success in getting those 2 grants. So I'll send that letter out to you if I didn't already. So I think we're covered. That's the update.
Yeah, how many spaces? 202?
I believe that. I'm confident that's what
I thought we were
200, give or take.
I thought we were over 300 on that one.
That was the net increase.
Oh, okay.
All in.
With the other piece.
There will still be space to expand that plot. I think it's about 100 extra stalls. Don't quote me. All of this will come out with parking. We can always go up.
Well, that's kind of my point. I think we need to go up sooner than we do later, because if, we're already busting at the seams during the heavy travel times. I just can imagine what, summer's gonna be like, so we're usually pretty heavy, so I'm like, is 200 enough, is kind of my question. I posed this question to the board, is there, possibilities to go a little fatter early? It's only gonna be more expensive if we do it later. So I don't wanna pass the good idea cutoff line here, but
I agree, we'll always need the parking, but it's taking steps, one chunk at a time.
Okay.
We don't need the whole property under construction either at the same time, that defeats the purpose too, so.
Just to give you a sense of timing on this, you know, like I said, the East Economy lot will be available this fall. Terry had indicated he expects this exit plaza to be done this fall as well. And we can't start on filling in the old exit plaza, obviously, until the new is in operational, so that'll be a 2000.
What was the date of the last sort of study in the park? Has there been a formal study of a ramp?
Yeah,
Just trying to.
they were running some numbers, towards the end of the year. I can have SP Plus and then Walker Consultants did some work on updating the two pro formas they've done prior. I'll find out where that study is. But
I'm just thinking, Rick, to your point, we get a year better planning. Too early to start. Look at go, no go decision. Preliminary.
I see one of the, people running for city commission mentioned a hotel and a parking ramp south of the airport. I don't know if you caught that in the paper. We've actually had 3 different people, look at a boutique hotel and a parking ramp here. Most recently was Ace Brandt. He just finished his 3rd review of it prior to passing away. We had a developer from Lenexa, Kansas that looked at it, and then the combination of the Leslies and Lawrence Mulberts and others had looked at it, and none of them could make it cash flow. The last one to look at it was Ace and his team. The concept was based on the hotel that is part of the Sioux Falls Airport, an Aerostay, and then like a 300 space parking. Walked away from it, and the other 2 did as well. So, but we can get numbers updated.
Yeah, it may not need to be a hotel. The park construction.
We can add amenities, so that would be great.
Can we find out what the occupancy is on the Sioux Falls Airport?
They're just completing a 500 ramp.
Well, it's a 1,000 space
1,000.
parking garage that is in excess of 50-some thousand for space. I haven't read their minutes lately to see if they've actually decided to move forward. They're landlocked, they have no choice but to go up. They have no place. I'll get an update from the director down there and see. I think the hotel occupancy does really well.
Okay.
And I think it's a combination of all three.
I was just at the Sioux Falls Airport last week and, did not recognize the brand. So I felt like there must be something affiliated with the airport. I had a question on the Gate 4 boarding bridge. Wasn't it mentioned in one of the past meetings that I was not at, that there was a refurbished one, and then that there was another bridge that you were looking at?
Yeah, one of the options was a bridge that was at the Memphis airport, I believe, that was about 20 years old, that a company called Aero Bridge could take and restore and repaint and recarpet and do all of that stuff, rewire, and then put it back out on the market. So they deal with refurbished bridges. And there was also an opportunity for us to get a bridge that was ordered for the San Francisco airport, as they were going to do dual boarding on a A380, and then they decided not to do that. So this company also has a bridge sitting in their yard, brand new, that obviously could be available as well. I can't remember the size of the bridge. I don't know if Darren and Jeff remember, but
It would work at Gate 4, but it was really too big. So it wasn't.
we're really trying to find one to right size it, what we have.
The Gateway Bridge is the oldest in operation, or not operating?
I'm pretty sure it is. I would be surprised if we find any older ones in the country. It belongs in a museum.
Get rid of it quick before the, Historical Society makes us keep it.
All right. Gotta take a picture of it before you destroy it. All right, moving on to number 10, authorized attendance at the AAAE Wildlife Management course.
Yeah, we have one, maybe two employees that'll go down for their certification in wildlife management, at the Minneapolis conference. And I believe we'll have, up to 3 employees that'll go to the, winter operations and de-icing conference in Chicago. All good for their training and good to keep them involved, talk with their peers and maybe learn some new techniques, but nonetheless, get them certified in our operations and with our
We need to,
yes.
motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the attendance of the conference.
Can I get a second?
I second.
Any other conversation? None?
Lind,
Aye.
Cosgrove,
Aye.
Capitan,
Aye.
Aye.
Engen.
Aye. Number 11, continued discussion regarding north and south general aviation ground rental rates.
So Mr. Flaxbarth is here. You received a couple of different emails. One that was as a result of a meeting after a last board meeting with Mr. Lind and Mr. Flaxbarth. And then Rick did some more analysis based on cost of living and so forth, or I'm sorry, CPI, and I guess we'll just continue the discussion.
Morning, everyone. I did kind of just a synopsis of all of the emails that been going around and making sure that kind of be able to highlight what we are discussing here. And so Sean had asked me to do some background, do some comparables here. And so basically on the sheet here to start off, where we are currently, South General Aviation rate is at 8 cents a square foot. North General Aviation currently is at 10 cents a square foot per year. And that last increase that was in effect happened back in 1995. So one of the things that we talked about was what do we use as the way to raise rates and how do we effectively do that? Well, one thing was discussed was to do the consumer price index. Well, going back to January 1995 to February of this year, the CPI has increased 88.7%. So using that as our benchmark, if you will, is how we get to raising the rate. The South GA then would, if you went with that formula, the South GA would be at 15 cents, so it would be from 8 cents to 15 cents. And the North General Aviation would go from a dime to 19 cents. So not quite doubling in rate there. So that, again, that's just one way to look at it and say, okay, could we use that and use that to in the future? It doesn't have to be done annually. Maybe it's something you do every 5 years. I know in our leases and properties that we have under our umbrella through our company, that's normally what's looked at is an increase every 5 years. So it's, if you will, it's just a way to build in the escalator using the CPI. So then in our discussion back on March 22nd with Eric and Sean and myself, we talked about just how do we install an escalator rate to bring us up from 1995 to 2022, and how long do we do that? How long does it take us to take that escalator and bring that rate up? So we looked at a couple of different formulas, some were just a 1 cent rate increase to 3 cent rate increase every 3 years. So that, you know, after a 10 to 12 year time period, then we would be pretty close to where we would be if we went by the CPI. So it gets us pretty much to that same level, to that same rate. So then one of the things that looked at, and again, it's hard to do this as far as comparables, simply because the airport authority property is, has a lot more, covenants on it, through, you know, whether it be the airport or the FAA, but trying to find some comparables in land leases in the Fargo-Moorhead area. And they range anywhere from 2 cents a square foot, up to $1. Again, it depends on if it's a high profile. Some were like along 53rd Avenue South. Again, it would be where, you know, along main corridors. Some were just meant to be construction sites where they're going to store pipes, construction material for a couple of months. So again, just looking at land leases, you know, outside of the fence, outside of the municipal airport authority's jurisdiction, and trying to find those comparables, you can see from 2 cents up to $1 a square foot, it's a wide range. And it, again, you know, they don't all come with the same type of scenarios that you have here. Then down on the bottom there on that sheet, I talked about, I went out and I did a nationwide search for airports and just tried to find, you know, maybe similar airports, but it's hard because not everybody has the FedEx and the UPS hubs. Not everybody has an air guard facility with their airport. Not everybody has a top-notch FBO. So, you know, there's so many things that go into it. So trying to find that airport that says, okay, you know, here's the comparable that matches everything that Fargo has, you're not going to find it. But what I did find was some interesting facts where there were some airports that said, okay, if you're going to lease land for aeronautical purposes only, so be a hangar, a private hangar, they said 25 cents a square foot. But if you wanted it for non-aeronautical purposes, so for storage or whatever, obviously it might not be on the prime land as a hangar would be, but the rate, they said it's 50 cents. So in other words, they kind of priced it to say, we really don't want non-aeronautical use, but if it comes to that, here's what we've got, okay? And I know there was also one that just basically said, we're starting at 40 cents a square foot. That was the starting rate. But then, interesting, Sheboygan Falls, I think there was Helena, Montana, and some of the other airports, they came out and they just said negotiable. So in other words, it would depend on what you're doing, how big, you know, size and scope of the project, similar to, say, a project that the Jet Center is looking at as far as their addition, compared to, say, just a small private hangar. So I think what they were looking at is just saying, you bring us the plan, and we'll, as a board or executive director decision, what that rate would be. So as you can see, it's kind of across the board here, but what I was trying to do is come up with different things, different scenarios to look at in rates and to say, here's some possibilities. Here's different ways to look at it. And then, if you will, throw it out on the table for discussion and see what the board's decision or recommendations would be from here. Questions?
Is there any conversation about the reversionary clause being one of the biggest discounts or detractors?
In talking with a local commercial banker, we talked about that, you know, that clause, even though it's not being enforced at this time here, it's still there. And so, you know, you have where, let's say, your initial lease term would say 20 years. Well, if you're taking out a loan to build that hangar, it has to be made whole with the bank by that 20-year mark. But then also, as an investor, maybe you're looking at other properties. And sometimes they say, well, I'm gonna use the leverage of what I've got invested, you know, I've got here in this property, and I can use that to do something else somewhere else. Bank would not do that, because they know that, if they had to go back, they, you know, this property might not be yours at the end of that initial term if that reversionary clause comes into effect. And I was not able to find or prove that any of those properties that I looked at across the United States that I used as examples, I did not know if they are or are not using the reversionary clause in their contracts.
What about the fact that if an airport gets a property back, if someone walks away from it, a property, that the airport is liable for then that property, the demolition or improvements of it? Does that play on airports? Were there any conversations with those facilities about an issue of having to take over, maintain, or destroy vacant property?
Well, and I think you have to look at a couple of other things, Mr. Chairman, with that, is depending upon the age of the property, is there asbestos involved? You know, I would imagine there must be some of the older hangars that would have that, especially within the insulation. So now you're gonna have to have removal of that, and that cost has to be absorbed by something. And if it ends up to be the airport authority because they inherited the property back, then, you know, that's an additional cost that would be above and beyond taking care of, whether it be tearing down the property, starting from scratch, or so on.
Mr. Chairman, Sean, do our leases require that they remove the buildings?
Yes.
So this wouldn't be an airport authority issue. The land lease requires, and that they remove it.
The only scenario would be is if they're bankrupt, out of business, or, you know,
Yeah.
that could happen, but.
But the reversionary clause, you can look at it as a negative or a positive. First thing, you can't get property adjacent to the airport that isn't subject. So, and again, leasing land, if we have the correct capitalization rate for the lease, companies should be indifferent. Do they have to put out the full cash amount for the land, or do they only have to pay and with most of them, if there is financing, you simply have agreements with the banks that they can assume the land lease, and it will take care of their problems to finance.
One of the things in over the years, this goes back prior to me when Floyd Berkeley was the assessor, maybe Jim Capitan recalls this, is that when the airport would do their periodic reviews of the ground rental rates, we'd engage the city assessor, sometimes commercial realtors. So from Floyd up to Ben Hushka, and then we'd had Marvin Heaton and I think Mitch Markison were the appraisers that were kind of assigned to it. They always thought the death of the reversionary clause, and that's why the rates were always low here versus other locations. So that was a big negative in their periodic reviews of the ground rental rates over the years. I don't know, Jim, if you recall any of that when you were in the assessor's office, but that was.
No, I do not recall doing that at all.
And I haven't engaged the new assessor yet, Slanowski, but we certainly can.
Chairman, you know, in our discussions, 8 cents a square foot for the land, obviously not for the building, because the person with the lease has to pay for the building, so all they're doing is paying for the land. We're low. You know, our number is low right now, and we probably need to raise it, but we don't want to raise it to the point where we stifle activity and investment. So we still want activity here, but the question is to the board, what about the escalator? How do we get from 8 cents a square foot up to the 20 cents a square foot, where our target is? So I think that's really the discussion where we need to focus here and say, 20 cents is the mark that we want to go to. How fast do you want to get there? Right?
One thing I think we need to consider too, what are the assessed values of those properties? Because the city is benefiting, the county benefits, as well from our actions out here. And I don't think we ever discussed that. I know it comes up, maybe the rates are deemed too low, but what is the city, county garnering in revenue from property tax off of these properties? We should know that as well too.
Our commercial land lease right now is 25 cents a square foot. So going from 8 and 10 cents a square foot up to 20 cents a square foot still leaves us below the commercial rate. But we just got to figure out how fast we get there. So.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, Rick, you and I talked about this, is that with the university and the research park, we have similar situation. We have leased land, it's specific use. You can't own the land and everything. And the process used there is to simply, on a periodic basis, look at similar commercial property. And, you know, if you can find comparable sales, and then from that, looking at a sales price per square foot and what would be an appropriate capitalization rate, and come to a target rate per square foot. I mean, so, you know, the simple math is if land we're selling for $1 a square foot, 8% capitalization, saying that the opportunity cost of having money tied up in land, you could get 8% interest on it if you had it invested somewhere else, translates to an 8-cent rate. And so that's done on, you know, I'm not sure if we have a set time period, but you could say every 3, 4, 5 years, look at it, and that becomes your target rate. You still have the flexibility then to use incentive pricing off that, but that you continue to do that. I don't think in this situation where we're at, you know, 8 and 10 cents, we can, it would be fair to immediately jump to that. And so I think what we could do is engage a realtor or an appraiser to come in and say, here's comparable rates. See if we agree. We're going to have to make some decisions on it. I know, Rick, we talked about your 2 cents a square foot was just, you can store dirt on the land for a year. That's probably not the rate. The, you know, property along 52nd Avenue with high traffic and retail, that's probably not the rate. But somewhere in there we can find that and then work towards that. And then the next question becomes, how do we want to adjust it? And there's really two ways. I mean, there's the simple negotiated rate, put in and try and tell the future for the next 25 years. And you'll know one thing for certain is that you'll be wrong. And, you know, you kind of live with that. But it's there and the mechanism's there. The other is to do the consumer price index in a formula and just plug into it every year and you go. If your formula starts to push you out of market, above market, the tenants will let you know. They won't kind of sit quietly and say, you know, if they can show you that, you know, whatever the formula is. So it's a matter of just picking that out and figure out what it is and where we want to go.
And that's where a lot of airports are right now, John, is their CPI. Bismarck is doing it, Grand Forks is doing it, and they're pricing themselves out of the market, but they don't have the ability to stop, okay? Yeah, the rate says we should go up 5 cents, but it's not a market. And the beauty of our leases with the private hangar owners is we have the ability to change that rate on every anniversary, every year. And the board, your predecessors and previous council made it happen that way versus trying to decide 3 or 5. Now, on the commercial side for FedEx, UPS, the sheriff's office, and others, it's every 5 years. And there's a built-in index that they've used at other cargo facilities that both FedEx and UPS are party to, that it's based on the CPI. I think you've read the formulas, or if I haven't, I'll send them out. but it can only increase a maximum. So if we're at 25 now, the next CPI review that we do for, I think it's the corporate air hangar is the first one that comes up. The most it could go up is 5 cents a square foot. That's the most, because it can't exceed like 20% of the previous year or something of that nature. It's a difficult language to read, but if you read through it and map it out, you can make it happen. So to your point, we just need some direction on how to do this that seems fair to the tenants. I would think the majority of the tenants would agree that, yeah, they should be paying a little bit more, but it's that top end that, right, wrong, or indifferent. If someone owns an aircraft in Fargo, Moorhead, West Fargo, and they decide, I want to build a hangar, where are they going to go? Here, if it's Moorhead, or it's West Fargo, or Kendrick, Barnesville, all of those airports I mentioned before, kind of our market in that arena. Of course, we compare ourselves to other airports and other situations, if it's passenger-wise or ARP or what have you. For that private aircraft owner, I don't think they're going to drive to Omaha or Rapid City or some other place to fly every weekend. It's going to be somewhere in this particular. We had a comment from John had to log off. I think is that what he said? He had another meeting to go to. Yeah, go ahead.
I do have comments about this. This plan gets us in a 10-year plan to the 2022 rate.
Right.
So in 2032, we're still going to be playing catch up potentially. So it'd be nice if it was not a set in stone, this is how much we're going to raise every year, but to be more consistent with the CPI and our competition.
So in every 3-year review, if it's necessary, but I'll process that people know this is going to happen in 3 years or 2 years or whatever that number is, but then it's consistent moving forward at that time. Of course, their rates are effective September 1st of every year. They do a CPI analysis and then whatever that number is, never go down.
Mm-hmm.
They're always the same, or they go higher, but it's September 1st. Bismarck, I believe, they do their analysis at the end of the year, then on January, their rates adjusted for CPI.
And do we know what the Grand Forks rates are?
Yes. 30 to 60 cents. Markets, they have 0 private hangar development.
And by the way, this morning they announced, CPI went up from last month, 1.2%.
Grand Forks, the majority of their general aviation development is for university. We treat that as a commercial activity versus a private hangar. I don't know how many private hangars do they have? Do you know, Jeff, do you know?
There's very little private general aviation traffic there because the college has so much activity that it kind of keeps people out. And because the tower's busy, the pattern's busy all the time, and they don't really want to be there. So a lot of people go to Crookston who are going to have private stuff, and Crookston.
I think the last number I had from Bismarck was 15 to 17. So I guess give us some direction or think about it, or what's the next step? I guess that's
Is there consideration by the board for a process moving forward? Don?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll take a shot at it here. I would make a motion that we look at, I don't know if it's formal request for proposals or this is, realtors to provide sort of a review of comparable commercial sales. Might be looking at similar commercial property, metal building, to give the board an array of, here's a selection of, that we can have a discussion about what we think is comparable. And then from there, we would get thought process. We would start with that. Next step then would be sort of a determination, you wanna put a fixed amount step up, or do you want to use again, those things, there can be two separate things there, the adjustment to lease, but financing, also the assignment capability should take care of it. Issues financing. As long as the bank can step in, control their own destiny, they're fine. We will be wrong. I've never seen one yet.
So would you suggest that, and maybe Rick has done this, that Rick partner with a couple of other random commercial realtors to provide a report, or he's a commercial realtor, so.
If that's something that you'd be willing to do, a more formal process would be going to request for proposals to enlist some appraisers, to do those things.
John, I guess I would also ask, we need to have a little criterion of exactly what it is you're wanting us to compare to. And that's how we started this actually, was myself inviting other commercial realtors to our office, sit down. We went through the criteria we talked about here today, and then asked for their recommendations. So that's how we got started.
I think that he's already done the work that you're saying, and saying, hey, how much is the land worth? I think that's already done. I don't think that we need to go and get RFPs and get more people weighing in. I think that's wasting time and wasting people's efforts. I think setting the rate at 20 cents a square foot for land going forward, I think is a great number. How are we going to get there is the question. I don't think that we need to go get
and
there.
I would push back on that a little bit, because I look at, these numbers, I can't tell you what 20 cents a square, what it is. I mean, they've talked about it, they're saying here's a range, but as we talked, 2 cents a square foot is bare land, little dirt path into it, store stuff on it. Dollar, what is that? I think this board has to have a little bit of an understanding of what is that 20. Right now, I can't tell you, drive you around and say, this looks like it'd be plus 20. I think we should at least have that data to look at that.
Well, and that's why we asked him to tell us, hey, what's the number? And he told us what the numbers are. They're sitting.
Well, I'm not certain that you're saying if we wanted to purchase land or lease land at 20 cents, what is it? Give me an example of what that would be.
I think we're only, at this point, we're just talking ground lease. We're not talking about a purchase. So
right. Whether it's a purchase or ground lease, we can convert between those, make assumptions and look at it. If 20 cents is the number, and we wanted to go show me some 20 cents a square foot land, what would that be?
I mean, it's available, but in most of the cases, it would be in bulk. I mean, you'd be buying land that's on the edge of, say, Fargo-Moorhead, outside of their zone controlled by the city. Farmland, would start probably in that dime up to 20, 25 cents. But
thank you, but Eric, that's what I'm saying. We should have that understanding. I'm not arguing 20, 40, 65, whatever. But if we're going to set it at 20 cents, this is the basis for that.
Want the backup data, right? So I had, a few weeks ago, put Rick in contact with an appraiser that the Rochester Airport uses, or it's actually the Mayo Hospital owns the Rochester Airport and operates it. And he specializes in airport valuations and appraisals. I don't know if that would be a resource, even if it costs us a little money of his time. Do you still have that contact? I can't remember his name right now, but that may be someone to engage that looks at airports throughout our region that benefits the Rochester Airport and possibly at the NAC. I'll find out. But maybe that's an outside set of eyes that has some fresh ideas that maybe gets to your cars. Well, having rationale that's defendable, I guess, if you will.
And like I said, I just don't have any basis.
At this point, Rick has put a lot of time and effort in. At what point is he doing this for a nothing too. So we have to be careful of that, to do what we're asking.
Yeah.
Consistently for them to do without any compensation. I think we need to be careful of that. For your benefit or for your. Sure.
So let me simplify the motion, is that I would just like, make a motion that we have examples, of the rates that we're talking about and discuss. And if we do that, then after that, we can decide where we want to go.
With caveats and parameters of those examples. Thanks, Rick. Can you get a second, you? Motion.
No, I'm not a second. I think that we have a good number already. I think that we looked at Detroit Lakes, we looked at Grand Forks, we looked at Hillsborough, we looked at Fargo, and I think that we have the data we need. I just think that we're just chasing our tail, but if you'd like to second it, you go right ahead. Don't feel any pressure from my side.
My concern
I have
is,
one vote, that's all.
Mr. Chairman, my concern is that I think since the last increase was not since 1995, it seems that a rate increase is imminent and probably completely appropriate. So we just want to make sure that we're choosing the right escalation and the right rate.
Here's the surrounding ones.
So.
Detroit Lakes for, at least for New Zealand. That's when we have to use airports, because we're an airport.
Does the board feel that we have enough information to decide now? That would probably be, like Mr. Cosgrove is saying, we need more information. We have some information. Maybe we need to talk to Rochester. Could we revisit it at our next meeting with a little bit more information?
I guess we can't have a discussion without a second. Since we're moving it up. Let me be clear here, is that the rate that we're looking for is not necessarily the target rate that we set or a specific lease rate. It's simply saying, if we look in the market, what's the appropriate rate? Eric, that's why I say an airport rate is not necessarily the rate. Because as we've discussed, airports might be providing incentive rates or in different situations. So this is saying if our starting point would simply be an appropriate value could be established based on these rates. Here's the ones that make where this comes. And if that's 10 cents a square foot, if that's $1 a square foot, setting the rates beyond that becomes then a process from a baseline to here we are. So what happened here, and the reason this came up in the agreed upon procedures with the city, is they looked and they said, wait, this hasn't been done since 1995. There's a problem. And they didn't say, has it been adjusted or anything? Just the rates were set. But a process and move from it. But I don't like situations where we're absolutely locked in. And this says 20 cents a square foot. I want to know if in the market right now at 20 cents a square foot, what could I get?
Not that the rates haven't been periodically reviewed, like what Eric has, and what out was the comparisons between those airports I mentioned in our area where a private aircraft owner may decide to build a hangar.
Yeah.
Not that they haven't been reviewed, just that that's kind of where the rate stalled based on those parameters.
Well, and, you know, for the last 10, 15 years, CPI, you know, Rick, you calculated it from 95 forward. Through the last 10, 20 years, it has not been a huge factor. We're now probably doing this at the absolute wrong time because it's going crazy at this point. Kind of That's all I'm trying to figure out here. So, and I know why that got kicked out with the agreed upon procedures. It's 1995. We're just trying to figure out a way, why, because we just flat out say 20 cents. I think we could be challenged.
Do we have a second? Second, let's, before we continue, let's see if there's a second. Do we have a second?
John, can you restate your motion?
Simply what we're gonna ask, Rick or the portion of the people you put together is to give us examples of various ranges so we can look at those, compare them, better understand what's.
To some extent, I think he's done that. But
Right. It just
you want a
hasn't
deeper
gone.
dive?
It hasn't probably done. He knows what the properties are. We don't. Would we agree that, 2 cents is appropriate? Well, maybe that should be thrown out, as well as the dollar should be thrown out. Here's kind of the range. And why?
Can I get a second?
So just to be clear, we're looking for, instead of Oregon, more of a local, like a Rochester, a Detroit Lakes, and to have it listed for us.
Yeah. And, really, if you go through and look at comps, it's going to say, here's a property, it's owned this, it's 2 acres, it's sold on this date for this square foot.
And do you have a time frame in mind?
A half hour. I would ask Rick or how you want to approach that. Would the next meeting be appropriate?
You're wanting me to look at sales then, or, just leases?
If you got, you can move between the two. If you tell me a property, sold for $2 a square foot, we can infer what, not that it would rent for that, but what it would be, because simply the capitalization rate of the selling price. And so we would have a basis to kind of compare. So both. I don't think you're gonna find a lot of land. You're gonna find some, more and more, actually. But
And we may have to go back a number of years.
Mhm.
Can I get a second?
Jim? Is Jim on the line?
He's still there.
I know he's been a former airport manager as well.
Capitan?
Yeah, I'm on, but I'll tell you, everybody that's talking about, it's really I'm getting about every other sentence. Something is cutting out, so I'm not following this discussion very appropriately.
John, can you repeat your motion one more time?
Maybe the easiest way to put this is, I will again revise the motion to ask for a more detailed report on the information and data used to suggest these prices that would include examples so we could understand specific properties, and we as a board will look at it and say that's appropriate.
Are we talking about land leases, the price per square foot on a land lease?
Correct.
Yep, on airport property.
Okay, and what is it presently? I heard 2 cents and I've heard 20 cents, and I don't know which is which.
8 cents a square foot for the South General Aviation area and 10 cents a square foot for the North GA. And we're talking about potentially moving it to 20. But John would like to have more information as to what there is in the area, not specific to airports.
Well, I think I think number one, we have to, apples for apples. I mean, let's check what other airports are like, but yes, we can check the other commercial areas, see what the land leases are there. But also we could, do it on, like, say if it's 8 cents in the south and 10 cents, raise it 3 cents with an escalator clause that it's gonna go up a nickel for every year for the next whatever till we catch up to what the appropriate values are.
Well, and again, what I'm trying to avoid is that this came to us as part of the city of Fargo's agreed upon procedures, part of their audit, and saying, hey, these leases haven't been updated since 1995. Right, wrong, or indifferent, you know, we're trying to deal with that situation. And so if, today we take action and say, it's 20 cents, and they say, why 20 cents? I don't have the answer.
Okay,
So,
I'm following you now.
so Jim, I think John's, motion is, let's gather more data so we have, a strong backing of information when we go forward to the tenants. Is that fair? Okay. I'd like a second on his motion.
I would second that then.
Good, we have 2 seconds. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other conversation?
I would, Mr. Chairman, is Jet Center considered commercial or are they considered private?
General aeronautical service providers, so they're in the same rates as a private.
Okay, so it does affect you guys, okay. I didn't know if you were on the commercial rate or not, so.
Well, and I think we need to continue to go forward with this, but I'm certainly not advocating that we would stop everything. You got, you know, your project is in gear, already taking care of that.
So we have a motion and a second, and again, I believe Mr. Cosgrove just wants to gather more information so we have ground to stand on when we put our numbers to the tenants.
To the tenants and
to the city.
And to the city as well.
All right. Good. Call for a vote.
Lynn,
No, I think we have enough information as we said, but go ahead.
Cosgrove.
Aye.
Capitan.
Aye.
Hickman.
Aye.
Engen.
Aye. Move on. Receive preliminary 2021 statement of operation.
For you is kind of the breakdown of our operational and maintenance expenses, what we call our 561 account. These amounts haven't been audited yet, as the city audit is just kind of getting underway. They're still, as of yesterday, still compiling information to start the process with Bailey, but this gives you an idea of where the operational income is at and where the expenses are. Everything is listed out on there. I guess if you have any questions, you can see the impact of the Carissa and the CARES grants as far as what we've been able to draw down and receive for the operational expenses that are determined eligible by the FAA. And so you can see what the variances are. $2,153,331 without the grants and $6,420,640 with the grants. The last page is the expenses for the fire department and the police department. And for both, those costs are zero, as the airlines pay for that cost, with the exception of the overtime that we have for the fire department where they assist on airfield operations. We were able to get that through the Carissa grant that we have there. So that just kind of gives you an idea. This is, we still call it preliminary, period 15, which is the third process for calendar year 2021. I don't know if they've closed that out yet. I'll find out today. I will send that out to you as well, what we call period 15, as they're still making transactions for there. We haven't had a clean handoff of the final numbers in all of our accounts to our new accounting system. That is still in process. Probably won't be handed off until the audit is complete. I'm not quite sure. Kent Costanell is retired, so I'm working with Steve Sprague, Jamie Bullock, and Wyatt Pappenfuss down there, and along with Jamie, that's with Balance Tax and Accounting. to get those, final numbers when they are. There'll be a trial balance that'll come out, there'll be a fixed asset handoff, but we're still getting those there. So I don't know if you have any questions just on the statement of operations itself.
Mr. Chairman and, Sean, are we able, are we operating without financial statements with our new provider at this point, or what are we doing?
So this is what you have here. This is the start of those financial statements.
Right,
that
but
we have.
this is January.
There's January and February, so March isn't complete yet, what you have there. And more so, why these are handed out, this is from our new accounting system. These are handed out so you can see the examples of the types of reports that they can provide.
Okay.
So if we look at January, this is right from QuickBooks. This is live revenue and expenses, the one-page summary that's here. And as you're aware in QuickBooks, any of these line items that are on there, and Jim Capitan and I did email these out to you this morning, so you should have them.
Okay,
So any of these line items you can click on, and the one that I starred there, the 42,865, attached to the January report is the detail behind that line item. So it ties right out, so you can see where all the revenue came from.
Yeah, I'm not concerned with the format at this point, but we're nearing mid-April and we're operating with financial statements from January and February. That's not a good place to be.
Yeah, we fully understand that, and we're trying to get there along with the city to hand us off the data so that we can start with accurate numbers in our accounting system that we have. The expenses and the revenues are there, it's just the starting numbers is what Jamie's been working with balance tax and along with the city. So we have been working with Judy Ofdahl, she left. We've been working with Kent, he left.
No, and I understand the difficulty of it, but our fiduciary responsibility as a board operating multi-million-dollar operation without current financial statements is not an acceptable position.
John, I agree, and I think we go back to the city of Ferrari once they speed things up and get your act together.
I don't think that's a problem.
You shouldn't be going into month
No,
16, 17.
Mr. Chairman, this is why we talked about having parallel systems, having everything running last year, so this wasn't a problem.
We attempted to do that, and both between the city and the accountant that we're working with, it really wasn't feasible to start with the numbers from last year because of how they would transpose into the new QuickBooks.
Again, all explanations for what's going on. The fact remains, we're operating a facility without current financial statements, which is very, very dangerous.
I wouldn't say it's dangerous, John. I would say we're transitioning. We came through COVID, and we're working to get the final numbers from the city so they hand off. Those numbers are accurate. I know Sean does not want to represent to us or the public misinformation on these reports. And so getting that information from the city, making sure it's accurate is important. And I would sooner take a little time and have that accurate than just throw something out.
Mr. Chairman, again, explanation, great, understood, understand why it's happening.
Then what's the issue?
The issue is that we can't continue to operate.
I understand that.
We have to correct it. It's a very serious issue, and it has to be dealt with very quickly. This was discussed in a one-year transition, and it was discussed to make sure that we had systems running parallel so that we did not get into this. And here we are.
How do you propose we change it?
I don't know. It shouldn't be, we shouldn't be in this place to begin with.
Not too far away, I can tell you that.
Again, Sean, I understand the reasons for it. It's just
100%. Don't get me wrong. I want the financials as bad as you do. But the accountants made the decision, both from the city and the one that we're looking at, the outside, looking over our shoulder, decided that running the parallel systems just wasn't feasible for whatever reason. They've been getting all the trial balances to get all the accounts set up. So I would say that before the end of the month, hopefully, they've got their numbers solid so that when they start the daily audit, they can hand those numbers off. But that hasn't been the case. We've been waiting, Joan and I have been waiting, along with Jamie, to get all of that information so that we can start this program accurately. Like I say, the revenues and expenses are correct on here. It's just the fact that handing off all of the other information hasn't happened because the numbers keep changing on their end. So I get you 100%, John. I don't want to be in this position either, but it's going to get corrected. Your comments are noted, but I'm even more critical of it than you are. So I get it fully. I understand.
And could we at the next meeting then have somebody from our new accounting services present what the problems are?
Yep. In person.
And then also, I think, can we get from the city what the status is on their timing too?
Mr. Chairman, that's exactly what I was going to bring up. If the city is part of the problem, let's have somebody from there be at the next meeting.
I agreed we can do that. The question is, what's the request? We need to hear from both of them. I agree.
When they'll have the final numbers done so they can hand off final amounts and the trial balance, the detailed trial balance, so that Jamie can enter in the numbers back to January 1st on what numbers are we starting with.
Well, but here's one of the things that should have been taken care of in the last year is that you have full access to those numbers. The airport does have full access into the city system to pull any of this out, and that has not been done.
Yes, it has.
Well, then where's the holdup?
We have through December, we have period 13, period 14. I'll check if period 15 is done. So we get all of that information that gets handed off, but yet they keep changing. The numbers are changing. I think we're all done now processing 2021 invoices. They have all of the accounts receivable. They have all the accounts payable.
And when you say they, we're talking our new accounting provider, not the city.
So the city has that information.
Right, but you have direct access into that system.
Correct.
To pull the information that you're talking
That's
about.
correct. And we have pulled that information.
But they don't have the right to manipulate the city's system.
They don't have the right, yes, they do. They can print reports out of the
I have
city
all
system.
those reports, and I'd be happy to share all of them with you. Whether it's
So-
the trial balance, all of the revenues and expenses.
Well, then you have everything that you need.
We do, but they're not final. They aren't final. So I guess the accountants can come and explain it to you, because I thought we could have started with numbers a long time ago on January 1st. But the accountants on both sides say, wait until the numbers are final, wait until the numbers are final. That's what we're doing. We're waiting until the numbers are final. I think we're almost there. In fact, we may be there now with period 15.
Well, it's fine to bring somebody from the city in, but, we're running our own accounting system now. We have the ability to draw the information as the airport authority out of the city system. So, we have that ability, and we need to take control of it. Our new accounting provider has to take charge and get this thing going.
Understood. Loud and clear.
So at our next meeting, can we, get someone from Balance and the city of Fargo here? Is that agreed? We would need people from both sides here to answer to the questions that we have.
Certainly, if the statement is the city of Fargo is not providing the information, that is not correct.
No, they're providing the information.
Okay.
They're providing the information. That's not the issue. It's just getting all of the transactions done in the format with which that they presented to the auditor. They have transactions behind the scenes that we don't see. And it's, once those are done, John, they're getting us the information. Don't get me wrong. It's all there. It's just, there's other transactions they do. Jeff has been involved in discussions with Jamie Bullock they're still going on right now in terms of how are they going to classify the federal funds that are still receivable for projects that are done. So for instance, we have a little over $4 million in our cargo apron that as of yesterday afternoon, they still don't know how to present to the auditor because they don't know if we're going to get CARES funding for it. They don't know if we're going to get CARISA funding for it. And they don't know if we're going to get ARPA funding for it. That's where the delays are.
Mm-hmm.
They're working as fast as they can. I'm not going to criticize the city of Fargo in any way, shape, or form because to get the information, we work with the FAA. He has answers questions out to the FAA on well, are we gonna do one development addendum to get all of these projects that we've talked about, or two? They don't have answers. But at some point, they have to say, well, this is an accounts receivable and accounts payable. Well, does it show up on the federal side of it? So when they do the federal audits? Well, right now, I think as of last night, Jamie's thinking that they're not going to include the airport in the federal audit side for Grant 49, which is the CARES grant. Grant 53 is the CARISA grant, because there's this uncertainty in terms of the timing. Is it going to be a 2021 expense, or how are they going to do it? So these questions are still pending that are out there, and these are big dollars. These are millions of dollars.
And again, we can't continue to operate without financial statements.
I agree with you
John, we're not
100%,
gonna
John.
continue
Nobody
operating
here
trying
wants
to
that.
finish at year end.
We understand it. You said that loud and clear, and I agree with you loud and clear.
We're trying to get to a
It's
new
gonna
state.
get done, it's gonna be there, but I want to guarantee to you that these numbers are gonna be accurate. Right now, I can't do that because we don't have the final handoffs of these numbers because of what I've just mentioned. On the federal side, until the city understands how to classify the federal funds that we expect to receive, it's the timing of when we receive those federal funds, either through, well, the other
We had
debate
a
is it's gonna be a
year,
grant.
we had a year to prepare for this.
Right, but those answers were still gonna be answered because the FAA is still trying to figure out.
We had a year to prepare for it.
John, it's not a cut the cord and it's an easy transition off. It doesn't work that way.
We had a year to prepare for
And
it.
we are
We
working
need
through it.
to, and I want to express the urgency that we have to
You
have
have done that.
accurate financial
You
statements.
have done that.
Okay, I haven't seen any correspondence to the board that there's been any effort made. There's been no discussion. We've simply gone along without financial statements, and I can't accept it any longer. But there's been nothing communicated to the board what's going on.
There's been nothing communicated to the board of the process going on.
Why we don't have financial statements.
I think Sean just did a good job of explaining why you don't have a standalone financial statement in the transition from the city of Fargo.
This is the first time we've heard this, Rick. Now, if it's been communicated between the two of you, that's something else. And that's a governance issue we need to address, but it hasn't been communicated to the board.
Have you asked for it?
Haven't asked for it, hasn't been communicated.
You haven't asked for it either.
Nope.
Mr. Chairman, I think maybe we can just put this off until the next meeting and have the, our new accountant and somebody from the city come in and explain it all as to why there's some information that we don't have and what information we do have, so we can all be on the same baseline. Sitting here arguing about what is and what isn't going to get us any place right now.
Agreed. Let's move on to number 13, airport construction and security update. I don't have anything. Nothing good.
I do,
Then
I do,
number
I'm
14.
sorry. I'm sorry. I just thought I would let you know that, we've been receiving shop drawings and stuff on the exit plaza. We're supposed to get a, finalized, schedule this week sometime. And right now they're shooting to start the beginning of June. There's a big delay in steel and those kind of things today. So, I don't want to start too soon. Don't want to rip up a bunch of parking that you could use. So that's the idea right now.
Right. Anything else?
Nope,
Terry?
that's it. Yep, that's it.
Nothing. Good. All right.
Jeff, I had a question for you. You said, you sent an email on Thursday. We'll keep an eye on the details emerging potential money for changing stations in the terminal, and that was for green energy stuff from the Biden administration. Can you explain that a little bit, please? Come over here so we can hear you on the camera.
Honestly, I don't know that I'm in position to do that quite yet. It was just an internal call that we had on information that we're hearing from the FAA that there's potentially an extra $250 million coming out sometime around mid-May, or the details of it will, to be used for green energy. So once we find out, what that money can be used for, my thought was, with the terminal expansion coming up, is there anything for Green Energy there or the electrical charging ports that, I mentioned previously. If that's eligible for that funding today, I don't know, sorry, none of us know. But like I said, just keep an eye on it.
Keep us informed, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Nothing else, sir.
Anything else, Sean, before we go to 14? Moving on to number 14, adopt a resolution of appreciation for outgoing MAA member Tammy Lynn. First of all, I'd like to say if I put in 5 hours, she put in 50 or 100 hours into a project, and we took advantage of her skills. The AEPC existed and was supported by her actions, and the efforts for the benefit of those employees that benefit from the scale adjustments and the job description optimization was well worth it, and it had a lot to do with her efforts. I believe she helped with the handbook too, and probably had a bigger part in the handbook as well too than we know. Her past experience was well appreciated, and understanding of actually city and state government helped a lot too. She will be missed here.
Well said, thank you. Thank you, Tammy, for all your hard work.
Any comments from the other board members? Tammy, you'll be missed. We appreciate your efforts at the Municipal Airport Authority. Thank you.
I'll make a
And I'd like
motion
that
to approve the resolution of appreciation for Tammy.
Can I get a second?
Second,
With a motion in 2 seconds. Lynn.
Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye.
Capitan.
aye.
Hickman.
Aye.
Hingham. Aye. Anything else for the body?
Some minor stats. So March of 2022 was the busiest deplanement month in the history of the airport, 44,931 arriving revenue passengers. 4th busiest month on record for total passengers, and Allegiant had their busiest month on record. So kind of trending in the right direction. However, Volair runs weekly reports for us on what schedule changes there are right now. And of course, our service to Tampa, St. Petersburg ends in May, which is seasonal service. And then Allegiant has filed schedule changes to reduce capacity by 12.1%, fewer seats in May versus the current scheduling period that they filed. They will increase some Arizona and Las Vegas capacity. Arizona and Las Vegas capacity were reduced in May, but they're going to increase Nashville and Orlando. So the pilot shortage is still continuing to impact their decisions as they're losing 20-some pilots a month and gaining in the teens. So they're just kind of in a negative mode right now. What we have right
Anything
now.
else? Anything from the audience out there in Zoom land? Nothing? Meeting adjourned.